Hello children, I'm going to read to you another story. This one is called A Walk in the Park, and Big Teds and Little Teds have come to listen to it today. Alice the giraffe is having a sleep. The pictures in this book are really curious. Have a good look at each page. I'll hold it open slowly so you can see what's going on. It's by a man who's called Anthony Brown, and he always puts odd things in his pictures. One morning, Mr. Smith and his little girl Smudge took their dog Albert for a walk. On that same morning, Mrs. Smythe and her son, Charles, were taking their dog, Victoria, for a walk. Smudge, Mr. Smith and Albert went into the park. Mrs. Smythe, Charles and Victoria arrived soon afterwards. Albert was impatient to be let off his lead. Victoria waited quietly until Mrs. Smythe had detached the lead from her collar. Both dogs were free. They chased each other all over the park. There's a lot going on in the park. You have to look very carefully. Mr. Smith went to sit at one end of a bench and Smudge sat with him. Mrs. Smythe sat at the other end with Charles. Smudge and Charles looked at each other. Can you see the feet of the bench? What's happening there? Albert and Victoria raced along the paths, dodging around trees, leaping over flower beds. First Albert chased Victoria, then Victoria chased Albert, then Albert chased Victoria again, so quickly that sometimes it was difficult to tell them apart. More going on in the park. Can you see Father Christmas there? While the dogs played, Smudge and Charles edged nearer and nearer to each other. Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smythe looked the other way. I wonder what's happening to those trees. Smudge went on the swings, swinging higher and higher, as high as she dared. Charles was not so sure. Meanwhile, an angry gardener chased the dogs off the flower beds. He's so angry, something's happened to his teeth. Can you see what? They took off their coats and Smudge swung like a monkey on the climbing frame. Something else has happened to those trees now. Albert felt too hot, so to cool himself, he plunged into the fountain. And what a fountain that is. Smudge and Charles climbed a tree. Wonder if you can find any animals in that tree. They all played on the bandstand. The whole world seemed happy. Lovely happy colours in the picture. But Mr. Smith read his newspaper at one end of the bench, and Mrs. Smythe looked the other way. Charles picked a flower and gave it to Smudge. "Here, Albert, here, Smudge," yelled Mr. Smith. "Time for home." "Come here, Victoria. Come along, Charles," called Mrs. Smythe. "Time for lunch." Mrs. Smythe took Charles and Victoria home, and Mr. Smith took home Smudge and Albert. All those different homes. And Smudge kept the flower. Leaving the park. I wonder what you see when you go for visits to the park. Have a good look out. Bye everybody. See you tomorrow.